They're one of our most striking native fish families in Australia. And this is the type locality. And up until this year, this was the only known locality. And so they would have been all through the upper Murrumbidgee catchment. And there were no other native species up here, so they were the king of the stream at the time. And then in the 1860s, 1880s, trout got introduced to mainland Australia, and trout and galaxids do not get on. Because trout prey on galaxids, they compete for food and space and habitat. And if it wasn't for the waterfall, the species wouldn't be here. That excludes trout. And because of the work we've done to document the horse impacts, the horse crossings of the stream, we know that we have to do something about horses. This is part of the bank widening that was starting to occur on this horse crossing. And we map 60 horse crossings in that 3.5 kilometres of stream. So one every 70 odd metres. And that's a fair bit of degradation. And so we got this horse-proof fence put up in 2 sections. So we've protected maybe 70% of the prime habitat in this creek now with this horse fence. This was bare soil before, and it's already starting to revegetate.
When the Black Summer bushfires happened a couple of years ago, we found ourselves in a position where we were looking at how we could spread the risk. Although the fires were catastrophic, it did actually provide this opportunity so that we could look at alternative sites and setting up insurance populations for them. We rescued 146 individuals. It gave us a chance to basically learn more about this fish because nothing was known about how they existed in captivity.
Well, these guys were actually rescued from the bushfires, and from that rescue we thought that these guys would be pretty good broodstock to trial a captive breeding program, and we know the stockies are pretty endangered, so we're going to try and breed them here and see if we can produce babies that are good enough to put back into the wild. Best outcome this year is some fertilised eggs which hatch and we get some babies, and those babies survive.
We were able to get the fish on the agenda and received funding through working with LLS and the Australian Government Bushfire Recovery Funds to not only support some of the captive breeding that we'd started, but also to seriously invest in exploring alternative options and setting up refuge for Stocky Galaxias.
The biggest problem is that to find sites to reintroduce the species to, nearly all of the habitats are occupied by trout. And so it either then means you have to try and build some artificial barrier that can keep trout out and then eradicate trout from where you want to reintroduce them, or you find areas that have a natural barrier or something like that. The Yukonbean Borrows is just such a habitat.
So when people think of national parks, they typically think of undisturbed natural ecosystems, but that's not always the case. And at this site, we have an area that was hugely impacted by the development of the Snowy scheme in the 1950s. With this fish project, we're actually able to put this site to really good, meaningful use. What we're doing is creating channels between those ponds, putting rock in it and riffles to make it be more similar to natural habitat for the species, and then moving water through that system. So we're putting solar pumps and irrigation system that will allow a circuit of water to go through each pond, connecting with channels and little refuge ponds that the fish can harbour in, put in habitat that rocks and logs into the water so they can have shelter, and plant vegetation that's similar to their natural environment.
We've been setting gill nets to try and trap and remove some brook trout that were inadvertently stocked into a couple of the dams here. We're looking to ensure that the site is predator-free before we release the stockies here. And then hopefully in the next year or two we'll be able to release some Stocky Galaxias here and we can set up an alternative breeding site for them.
It's a bit of a long shot in that it is at a much lower elevation than they naturally occur at, and it's in a different catchment. But you know, the way that we're going to crack this nut about how to conserve this species is to try some things, and that's what we're doing at the Yucumeen Burrows.
If you come back onto this site in 5 or 10 years, what I really hope you'll be seeing is fish that are field fit. They're not in labs, they're not in zoos. They're adapting to this natural environment.
I have grandchildren. I want to bring my grandkids up and show them Stocky Galaxias, so I need to conserve them. I want my grandkids to bring their grandkids up and see Stocky Galaxias. If you've got an opportunity to preserve them, conserve them, why wouldn't you?